Okay, so here are the few parts that we've taken apart so far. We got the handle, the screw for the handle, cover plate, four screws for the cover plate, mainspring. This is how it looks like inside. If the spring was in here, it would be right in there. As a matter of fact, I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to put the spring back as if I were going to put it back together so you can see it with everything.
As we glance through the inners of a Rhino, you can see the complexity of the parts that make it up. To some, this might be a curse. To some, this might be a good thing. To me, it just makes the Rhino what it is. A really fun shooter, and regardless of how it is made inside, I know it works, and it's quite well at what it does. You can see, obviously, the external hammer. You can see the cocking lever. You can see the hammer spring lever, the return lever. You can see a couple of pins all around the area, interlink lever, inner hammer, single action lever, caulking lever link sleeve, and the trigger, of course. And I will point these out as what they are. If you take a look inside, you can actually see where the mainspring is located. It's right at the bottommost part of the grip, and right there is actually connected to two parts. It's hard to tell, but the mainspring is connected to both the hammer spring lever and the return lever, and it makes contact at the top and at the bottom of both of those parts that are located right there. That is what allows the trigger to return every time you pull it, and to allow you to keep firing consequent shots afterwards. This is how it looks like when you're actually pulling the trigger. I'm holding the components in place in order to avoid all of them falling apart, but as you pull the trigger, you can see more or less how the mechanisms inside work together to get the perfect pull. Now I will try to demonstrate the same thing here, trying to use the hammer this time instead of the trigger. It's a little trickier to do it with the hammer and try to hold all the other parts in place, but it more or less looks a little bit like this when you're using the hammer. Okay, to remove the first part, you want to remove the main spring. You can use any pliers or anything to kind of remove that tension from either the top or the bottom part of those levers. Once you actually relieve some of that pressure, you can go ahead and pull the actual mainspring completely out, which will then free up the tension in all the other moving parts and allow you to proceed with the rest of the disassembly. Once you remove the main spring, you can proceed and remove it any which way you like, the remainder of the parts. I like to usually begin with the caulking lever, and that's this part right here. You can gently remove it. It's a very thin piece of metal. Grab your pliers, put it aside, and then you can proceed with other components such as the hammer spring lever, which is the way I like to usually proceed. Now the hammer spring lever also has a small roller right on the back area, And if you see right here, it actually comes off fairly easy. There's very little tension. It's kind of almost held in there by grease, so it's a bit loose in there, nothing much to hold it in place. Once you have that out of the way, you can proceed with the inner hammer. This is the actual hammer, or the internal hammer, as opposed to the external hammer that it has on the top, which also makes this a lot more different than a revolver, or your traditional revolver, I should say, in the facts that, you know, this is the actual hammer. It's not exposed, it's not on the outside, it's inside of the components of the Rhino, inside the frame. So that is your hammer right there. It also comes with that little roller that holds it in place. I usually like to put it back in place to kind of remember where it goes. Alright guys, at this point we're pretty much done with all of the components for the hammer. We just have a little few more parts to go. I usually like to continue with the return lever, which is this piece right here. You gently also take that part out, and right underneath there's a little roller as well. You can take that apart for thorough cleaning. And you know, once you put that aside, you can also take that pin that's in place. The pin also has another roller in there. And most of these pins you can actually just interchange with each other. There's nothing special to them. That's the cocking lever link sleeve, which it's located right there at the top. It's also right on top of a sleeve. You remove that little pin right there. And the mainspring is about the only spring that has a thicker diameter than the rest. All the other ones are pretty much identical. As you can see, the hammer is pretty much free, and it's just tensioned by that little tension spring that it has underneath it. I will leave the disassembly of the trigger for part 3 of this video series. That's for another time. Too much for this video, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.